Good morning, everyone. Okay, welcome back to this session related to your operating system. So, in this particular session, we will be discussing about the remaining concepts related to your memory management. So, in the previous session, we discussed about the basics related to your memory management, how we can manage the memory, and for that purpose, what are the basic terminologies, what we need to know, and at the same time, what are the different criteria we require, like what are the different terms we have that we have already discussed. Okay, so let's begin the session. So in the previous session, we discussed about something called as introduction part related to your memory management, where we have come across something called as the basic hardware. Followed with that, we discussed about address binding. That is nothing but how to map the logical address with physical address. How to map a logical address with physical. What do you mean by logical address? The one which is actually generated by a CPU. So whenever you people compile a program, let us suppose you have written some program like a C program or a Java program, and you're compiling it. So that what happens at that time, the CPU, whenever you're compiling it, that particular program will be generated one address where we need to store. That is actually generated by CPU here, and that is what we call it as logical address. But that address is not the one where your exact program will be stored, because we know that a program to get executed, that should be brought into in our main memory, that is your RAM. So RAM will have a separate addresses. We call it as physical address. Now whatever the address generated by the CPU, that has to be mapped to this particular physical address. Then only we can store that particular program into that particular memory, and then the process actually starts. So how we can bind this logical address to the physical address, that we have seen in the previous session. So same way, based on that, as I told you, so we have logical and physical address spaces here. So that we have discussed. What is the difference here we have to related to that. And then we discussed about something called as dynamic loading and dynamic linking. So in the dynamic loading, we discussed that how we can load it dynamically. Suppose you people are using MLOC concept in a C program for allocating the memory dynamically. So that and how the loader will be providing you that particular memory or the linking part is done. How that linking can be done to this previous this particular program. That memory, whatever the memory we are allocating during the runtime, how that is mapped to this particular program, which is static in nature and already got stored in the memory, I mean your RAM. Okay, so remember here I'm talking about memory means nothing but it refers to your main memory. Okay, so how this is connected, that information is provided here. Now basically if it come across, so today we will be discussing about these topics, the latest topic, something called swapping, continuous memory allocation and segmentation. Swapping, I think basically you know what I mean by swapping, nothing but interchanging two different variables. Generally in the programming point of view, what we can say is nothing but interchanging two different variables. But here in this scenario, we will be swapping the processes, not the variables. So internally, the operating system uses the swapping concept to swap the processes, where in between your hardware device, I mean hardware disk, whatever we have, and your RAM, your main memory. So swapping of a process to the disk and bringing a new process from the disk into this particular memory is what main memory is what we call it as swapping here. So let's discuss in detail in the coming slides. Next, we have something called as continuous memory allocation. So whenever a process comes, we will be allocating the process a small portion of a memory, isn't it, within the RAM. So that portion, whatever we are giving, that will be continuous in nature. That we will discuss it, then you will understand clearly. So in this, the three topics, what we are going to come across is something called as memory protection. So how we can protect, like we know that multiple processes are getting executed within your main memory, that is your RAM. So since these multiple processes are executing, making sure that one process is not interfering with the memory of another process, we need to provide some kind of protection. That protection is provided here. Then we do have something called as memory allocation. So how we can allocate memory? There are strategies. There are two basic strategies using which we people are going to do that. Something called fixed and variable strategy. Okay. So fixed and variable. So that I will explain it when we are going into the slides. And then finally we have fragmentation. Fragmentation is nothing but small pieces of information or small pieces of memory that is left unused. That is what we call fragmentation. Now basically this is also two types we will be coming across. Something called as external fragmentation and another one is internal fragmentation. So two type of fragmentations will be coming across. We will be seeing what do you mean by external and internal. These are basically important because we also do have programs related to this fragmentation. So we'll be discussing them, means how this external and internal fragmentation takes place. And then finally, the last topic of today's session will be segmentation. Segmentation is nothing but separating into pieces. Okay, making the pieces of a particular thing. For example, you're writing a program. So in program, what happens? You people will be following something called as header file, right? So you will be including some header files like this, then some global variables, then your main program starts, and then you write some content. After that, you might be having some functions too, isn't it? Now, these, what are, actually, this is a single program, but this program will be divided into pieces, that is segments, like libraries will be divided into one segment, your global variable might be separated as another segment. Same with the function. We have two functions. These functions are separated as a separate. So this is one segment, this is another segment, small pieces, and this main program is one particular segment. Now in this way, your program will be divided into segments, and these segments, how these are stored in the memory, that is what we are going to discuss in this particular topic called as segmentation. So in today's session, the most important topics we are going to discuss here, that is the swapping, continuous memory allocation, and segmentation. So without wasting time, let's enter into this particular concept. Okay. Let's talk about swapping first. What do you mean? Let's talk the general term swapping. Let us discuss first. Then we'll enter with respect to our operating system. So what do you mean by swapping here? Generally, programmatic point of view, what you know, we will be taking some two variables, A and B, isn't it? As per programmatic point of view, I'm talking about right now. So we have two variables A and B. So A consists of value 10 and B consists of value 2. The general meaning of swapping is nothing but interchanging the values of these variables. Whatever the variables we have taken here, interchanging the values of these particular variables is what we call it as swapping, isn't it? Now, what will be the value? What will be the value we will be having here after? Okay, so this is before swapping, we are having these values. Then what about after swapping? What are the values we are going to get? The A value will be having 20 and B value will be having 10, isn't it? This is the way how we actually perform swapping in our programming. The same concept, the same strategy is actually used by the operating system for swapping the processes. Okay, the same strategy has been used by the operating system for swapping the processes. Now, where this particular strategy used means here I said that between two different variables, but where this operating system is using means not between the variables, but here we have two different type of things here. One is something we call it as your memory. So this memory is nothing but your RAM. And apart from that, we have one more thing, something called as backing store. This is your backing store. This is what we call it as backing store. So in this backing store. So for simplicity of understanding, you can assume that this is your hardware disk where you people are storing all your information like your movies, like you people are storing your documents and all. Okay, other information applications. Okay, so all that is what called, that is a simple standard hardware disk. That is what we generally term it as backing store as per operating system point of view. So in the memory, your RAM, the some portion will be occupied by some other purposes. That is nothing but the operating system will be accessing it in order to perform the operation. So in your RAM, for example, you have a 4 GB RAM. You cannot utilize 100%, means 4 GB of the space you cannot utilize it, because among this 4 GB, some portion might be used by your operating system. Okay, like you can see it in your properties. If you want, I'll show you up. Like for example, okay, so here I will show you. So I'm just right clicking here. So I'm typing here something called as system. So I just clicked on system here. Now if you look, so yeah. So I just want to show you so that you can understand. Please look carefully here. So you can see here something install RAM. So my system actually consists of 4 GB of RAM. But how much I can use here? 3.88 GB. Then what about the remaining 12 GB, 0.12? So 0.12 GB I cannot use. Apart from 4 GB, I can utilize only 3.88 GB user. Okay. What about the remaining 0.12 GB? Now this GB, this 0.12 GB will consist of this particular operating system. Within this, my particular something called 0.12 GB might be located. Okay. Not only this, addition to that, we might be using something. That means additional space might be used for the operating system. This is used for startup purpose. I think you people know about startup initiation. In the first unit, I said whenever you switch on your mobile, I mean your lapis, automatically what happens now? There is a program, Bootstrap program that will initiate your operating system. That will be located in this 0.12 GB. And once this particular operating system starts, then some portion will be occupied. Why? Okay, some portion of your RAM will be occupied by this particular operating system. I hope it's very clear till here. Yeah. So here some portion is occupied. Let us assume for timing, I'm assuming that 1 GB is occupied. What about the remaining? What is the remaining memory we do have here? 3 GB. Now this 3 GB is used for user processes. So whatever the user is generating, whatever the user is actually generating here, that processes that will be executed here, like process P1, P2, P3 and all. So here, let us suppose we do have two different processes here, P1 and P2. This is your P1 and this is your P2. And here what happens, we do have some slots. We divide the remaining portion of the memory into slots here, and within these slots we are going to allocate the processes. So every slot can contain only one process at a time. Okay, so remember every process can be allocated, means every slot in your main memory will consist of only one process at a time. Let us suppose I have allocated this to this P1. Now basically you should get it out, sir. You said in the beginning that these processes will be present in a ready queue. These processes basically will be present in a ready queue, like something P1. Okay, I have taken two processes. Okay, we do have two processes in the ready queue. This is your ready queue. So we are storing the processes in this ready queue, right? So you said that processes will be stored in the. So why we are getting this? So actually, this particular backing store consists of not the processes, but it consists of the memory images. It actually consists of the memory images. The memory images of what? The respective process. So, okay, what do you mean by memory image? Let me explain. Let me take some time to explain this. Memory image. So memory image is nothing but in unit 2, I said that every process will have its own PCB. I don't know how many of you remember this. PCB or PCB. PCB is nothing but process control block, or it can also be called as task control block, task, so on. Okay, task control block. So every process will have a PCB. And what this process PCB will consist of? It will have the details related to this particular process, like what is the sequence number of this particular process, how many registers are allocated to this process, how much amount of task he has completed, what are the resources he is actually accessing it, and how much remaining task he has to complete. All that information will be present in this particular PCB. Now this PCB is nothing but he is talking about here memory image. This will be stored into your external hard disk in a format of a memory image. Now, whenever the main memory is having a space, the CPU will try, I mean the operating system will try to find which process is existing in the ready queue. That process will be brought from the ready queue into your main memory, and with respect to that, whatever the image, whatever the PCB, okay, the memory image of that particular process is located in this particular backing store, that will be brought here so that this process can start executing it. Okay, this is the whole scenario that takes place. This is what we call it as swapping. Okay, I hope you people have understood this. So whenever you people are bringing this particular process memory image into this RAM, your main memory, we call it as swap in. Swap in, or we can also call it as roll in. There are two terminologies we can use. Either you can use swap in or roll in. And the same way, whenever this process is removed from the memory, definitely the memory image, whatever we are taken, that will be updated. Means he might be performing some operation here. After performing the operation, he might be coming out of this particular RAM. So when he is coming out of that, just I will tell you. So whenever he is coming out of this, suppose this particular process has completed executing. Now this P1 is coming out of it. So definitely his memory image also gets updated because he has executed for certain time. Now after that, what we need to do, we need to store it back again into the same location. What is the location we do have here? So which location we do have here? This is the location P1. So we will be storing the updated memory image again back into this particular P1. That is what we call it as swap out. Okay, or we can call it as roll out. I will show you in the next diagram. You can clearly understand that swapping in and swapping out. So whenever you remember that, whenever you're bringing the memory image of one process into the main memory for execution, we call it as swapping. And whenever the process executes or that process might have been interrupted or it is waiting for some other thing, then that particular process is removed from that particular memory. Then whatever the status of that particular process is there till that time, that has to be updated in this particular image, memory image of a process, and then it has to be again stored back into this hard backing store, that is your hardware disk. So that is what we call it as swap out. Okay, so this is a way how swapping concept is used by your internal operating system. Very easy. Okay, I'll explain it one more time so that it becomes easy for you. Just erase this all. Okay, I'll show you in the next slide so that it becomes easy for you to understand rather than drawing and explaining like this. Yeah, these are the whatever we have discussed right now. That is what been represented here. So what I said, we do have a backing store. What do you mean by backing store is nothing but your standard external hard disk, which is very large in storing the information. So obviously you might be having in your system 500 GB of your hard disk, or maybe a 512 or 1 TB of hard disk, right? It is very large space and it can accommodate all the copies of your memory images. Okay, and we already discussed about rollout and roll-in. So whenever we people are bringing that particular memory image from the backing store into your memory for execution purpose, we call it as roll-in. And whenever we are removing that and we are storing it back again in your backing store, we call it as rollout. Okay, this is the concept. And we said that every system usually have a ready queue. So what this ready queue consists of? The processes which are ready for execution and waiting for the turn. So from here, the process will be allocated to the CPU, and from the backing store, the memory image of that particular process will be brought. Okay. So I will show you in the next slide so that it becomes easy for you to understand. Yeah, this is the diagram. So if you observe here, okay, let me take some time to explain. So this is your RAM, main memory. So don't forget, I will be using mostly memory and main memory. So you just simply can assume that main memory is nothing but your RAM. So if you observe here, some portion is being occupied by this particular operating system. Okay. So whenever you start your Lapis or your system, some portion of your RAM will be occupied by your operating system. Now this is your backing store, your external standard external hard disk. Okay, external, or you can call it as hardware. It is a hard disk, what we usually have. It's very large space. Now here, what we are doing, we have two different processes here. We are trying to execute. Okay. Now first, what is saying swap out means, what did I say? Whenever that particular process completes and we are removing it from the main memory, that image of that particular process will be brought again back to the same location. This is what, so that is what we call it as swap out. We can also call it as rollout. Same way, whenever the process, now process P1 has completed now, we are we do have a ready queue here. So P1 has completed, there is P2 here. Now we are bringing P2 inside this particular RAM. Now with respect to P2, whatever the memory image we have in this particular disk, that we are bringing it in. That is what we call it as swapping. Now this process will execute. Once this is executed, we will remove this. Again, that particular process information, updated memory image, will be stored in this particular location. This is the way how generally it actually takes place. Now let's do some mathematical calculation to identify how much time it generally takes. How much time it generally takes in order to swap out a process and swap in a process. Since we do have two processes here, let us take only two processes here. Let us assume that process P1 is having a size of 100 MB. Okay, let us assume that process P1 is having a size of 100 MB. Same way the process P2 is having a size of 100 MB. Now what I wanted to do here is I want to find out how much time it takes to swap out and swap in these two processes. Okay. Now every hard disk will have its transfer rate, data transfer rate. Every hard disk will have a data transfer rate. What do you mean by data transfer rate is nothing but the speed with which this particular disk from the disk we can load that particular images. That is what we call it a data transfer. So here for this particular backing store, the data transfer rate is 50 MB per second. What is saying? For this particular data transfer, he is saying that it has 50 MB per second. Now, what he needs to say from if whenever you're loading from your backing store to this particular main memory, per second it can transmit 50 MB of data at a time. Same way unloading also 50 MB of data per second it can do. Now, can we calculate how much time it takes for the process P1 to swap out? Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Let me explain you. So, uh, what is saying? We have taken two processes, right? Okay, let me change. Okay, P1 and P2. Let me change the color. So P1 is how much we said? The size of P1 is 100 MB. And same way, what about P2? We have 100 MB file. Now, what is the data rate provided here? The data rate of a backing store, how much we said? It's around 50 MB per second. Okay, let's calculate how much time it takes for process P1 to swap out. Now, what is saying for 1 second, the backing store can either swap in or swap out 50 MB data, isn't it? Now, we want to know how much time it takes for 100 MB. It's very easy now. So, for 100 MB, how much time it is going to take? So, just a cross multiplication we need to do. So, that is nothing but 100 into 1 second by 50. So this goes and 5 twos. So it takes 2 seconds in order to swap out a process which is of size 100 MB. Now, if I want to convert that into milliseconds, it will be something 2000 milliseconds because 1 millisecond is equal to 1 second is equal to 1000 milliseconds. So it takes 2000 milliseconds of time to swap out one particular process. If I want to swap in another process, then P2 is of same size. So how much time it will take for P2 to be loaded into it? 2000 milliseconds for P2. And this is for P1. So what is the total time now? So total time is 2000 plus 2000, that is 4000 milliseconds. So it will take 4000 milliseconds of time to swap in process P2 and to swap out process P1. Now most of the time in this will be related to your something called as transfer time. And during this transfer time, your CPU will be sitting idle. Why? Because we are interchanging the processes. So what we are doing here, we are trying to interchange the process. P1 and P2 we are trying to interchange. Now during this process, the CPU will not be able to execute any process. Why? Swapping is going on. So that during this time 4000 milliseconds, whatever we got here, this 4000 milliseconds of time, the system means the CPU will be sitting in an idle state. Okay, so we will not be utilizing this, what we call, we may not be able to utilize the CPU 100, so 100% I said earlier, this is the reason. For 4000 millisecond, mostly it will not be executing. That's what it's saying here. Okay, I hope it's very clear with this. Okay, now if I ask you, how much time will it take to transfer a file which is of 3 GB? Can you calculate now? It's very easy. For 100 MB, what did we discuss? How much time it is going to take? 2 seconds. Now asking you 3 GB. Well, for mathematical calculations, as I told you, we will be round figure. So 1 GB is equal to how much we know? It's 1024 MB. But as per the rule, what did we say for 1 GB? For calculation purpose, scientists use 1 GB as 1000 MB. So here we'll consider, so 3 GB is nothing but we will be considering 3000 MB because for simple calculations, 24 GB MB is negligible. They just eliminate it. So how much we want to transfer? 3000. For 3000, how much it is going to take? 10. Cross multiplication, 3000 into 2 by 100. So how much time it is going to take? 60 seconds. Means it is, what do you mean by that? 60 seconds is nothing but it is 1 minute. So in order to swap in a process which is of 3 GB in size, it will take 1 minute time to load into your main memory. Same way, it will take 1 minute time to remove the same process into your hard disk. Means for 1 minute, your CPU will not be performing any operation. CPU always sits in idle state. Even not only that, even right now, I am not utilizing 100%. I can show you. So let me show you one so that it becomes clear for you people. So I just open the task manager and there you people can see it, how much I'm accessing. See, you can see here the CPU. How much I'm just utilizing 41% of my CPU. That's it. Not more than that. Even it is getting reduced now based upon the way I'm using it. I'm utilizing only 38%. So 100% we never utilize it. That is what he's saying in this particular thing. Okay. So I hope it's very clear for you people regarding this particular scenario. This is the way how actually swapping takes place. And one more point which I want to consider here is that the latest operating systems doesn't have swapping. Yes, latest operating systems what we are having, they do have swapping, but they doesn't support swapping most of the time. Swapping will be in a disabled state. So here the modern operating systems what they do is they use a threshold concept. They use a threshold concept. So what do you mean by threshold is nothing but something like, a target. Like for example, at your home, you people might be having AC and you're setting the AC at 25 degrees centigrade. So what you people are doing here, you people are setting the target, isn't it? This 25 degrees is nothing but it's a threshold, isn't it? So threshold is nothing but whenever the room temperature is below 25 degrees, the AC will be turned off. But if it is above the 25 degrees, then AC will be turned on. So that is what we call it as threshold. Here also within the operating system, they maintain a threshold for this particular main memory. Okay, so let us suppose this is your 4 GB of size, your main memory. 1 GB is occupied by your operating system. We are left with 3 GB. Out of 3 GB, let us assume that the threshold what we are keeping is 50%. Okay, so 50% is nothing but 1.5 GB. Now here what he needs to say exactly here, this 1.5 GB whatever we are taking, whenever the free memory space is above 1.5 GB, then the swapping will not be used. When this particular swapping will be used is, whenever the particular memory whatever we are using is less than 1.5, because this is a threshold. If your memory usage is less than 1.5 GB, it's okay. Okay, but if it exceeds 50%, it becomes 51%, then this particular swapping concept comes into picture. Then it will be used. And whenever you have sufficient free space in your user space, then definitely this particular swapping will be again disabled. And this concept is repeated. This is the way the modern operating system uses swapping concept. Okay, I hope it's very clear here. So this is whatever I have explained in the previous scenario, that is what been represented here. So you can see whatever 2000 milliseconds. I have taken the example. That is what is representing. Well, there are some constraints here which we need to focus. There are some constraints here which we need to focus on. So what is the constraint here we have here is, so what is the constraint we do have here? So the constraint here is that whenever we people are swapping out or swapping in a process, we need to tell the system that operating system that we are performing this. Now that is one constraint. Means for that we require system calls. These are the system calls which we use: request memory, release memory. So dynamically, if you are allocating some memory or dynamically we are trying to access the memory, then that will happen. That comes under system calls. We are going to generate system calls. Then it becomes somewhat typical. Okay, because system calls are related to your operating system, so definitely it is going to take some time for performing the operation. So that is one of the constraints related to your this. And one more constraint is, suppose the process which is in your main memory executing it, if it is waiting for some pending IBA operations to perform, then we should not try to swap that particular process, because if you're swapping it, what will happen? The next process which is coming, that will try to allocate. Let me take an example so that I can tell you. This is your RAM. Okay, we have two slots. Let us suppose initially we have P1 and P2. Now P2, for example, now there is another process P3. P2 is waiting for some IBA operation to complete. So in the meantime, what happened? P3 came, which is of higher priority than P1, but than P2, but less than P1. Now what the operating system will do? It will try to remove this P2 and place it in the ready queue, and it will allocate P3. But here P2 was initially waiting for some IBA operation to complete. When this particular IBA operation completes and comes here and provide the result here, which process is residing here? P3. So what actually this output means the result of I by U is related to your P2, not P3. Then this problem comes up, the conflict comes. P3 will come to know that this is not my address, this is not related to me, he will not accept. Again the conflict comes and again the operating system has to overcome this problem. So there the typical scenario exists. So never try to swap a process which is actually waiting for some I by operation taking place. Okay. So that's all related to this. And next is swapping in mobile systems. Basically, mobile systems are very small in size. They do have certain limitations related to your memory and all. We cannot use swapping. Swapping concept is not used in your mobile system. Then, sir, what about backing store? Yes, we use backing store, but not the one what we have discussed now in the previous slides. Here, the backing store is your flash memory because this is very small in size. Okay, because you know that your what we call the smartphone, whatever you people are using, that is of 6 inches. So 6 inches means it will not be, it cannot provide more information or more storage and all. Okay. So if you talk about flash memory here, it is small in space. So that's the reason it will have a limited write cycle. Means uploading and downloading, swapping in and swapping out, it takes a very less write cycle. If you do more that, what will happen automatically? The flash memory will start draining up, and we may not be getting a perfect throughput for that particular thing. Okay. So for that purpose, what happens? Apple iOS uses some strategy. How what is the strategy is whenever we these also uses threshold concept here. So whenever the memory usage exceeds this particular threshold, the iOS operating system will ask the applications which are running to please remove some space. What how much memory they are using it, just remove some amount of space that will ask for the application. Now how this particular space can be freed by the application, whichever the read only data we have, that we can try to store it back in your flash memory. Okay, read only data whenever we want we can just bring it and we can execute it, we don't have to modify. Wherever the data has to be modified, that should be present in your main memory. So whatever the read only data we have, we'll simply remove it, store it back into your flash memory. So whenever required, we'll bring it up. So in this way, the applications will actually free up some portion of the memory. But there are times when applications may not be able to free up. Then what is the scenario means? iOS will simply terminate that particular application. Sometimes you people might be getting your smartphone saying that the application, like for example, you have opened WhatsApp. It will say the WhatsApp has terminated unexpectedly. Okay, the WhatsApp has stopped working unexpectedly. What do you mean by that? It is occupying too much of space in your main memory, that is RAM. And the system operating system, your Android operating or iOS operating system is making sure that he is not consuming that much of this. He is asking to vacate, means release some space, but the application is not able to do that. What the Android said, Android did immediately terminated that application. So even though you are using it, the Android operating system has simply terminated it. Okay. What is the reason? Simply to free the memory. So that is the main purpose we actually use this. Okay. So this is the way how to actually your swapping and all takes place in your mobile systems. And the next very topic that comes here is something we call it as continuous memory allocation. So here, what we are going to do in this is, before discussing about continuous memory, I just want to clarify related to your RAM. You have seen the RAM diagram in the previous session. You might have seen like this is the RAM here we are having your main memory. You have seen that operating system is occupying some portion and the remaining portion is given for user space, means whatever the processes we are creating to get executed. Now here, this operating system is located in a higher level memory or lower level. I did not provide any information like this one is 0000 or something, this no 4000 MB, something like that, isn't it? So here what is saying is this operating system, whatever is the space it is occupying, it can be stored either in a higher level memory or it can be stored in a low level memory. Okay, low level is nothing but this one, 000, wherever you think. So either it can be stored here or it can be stored in a higher level. But what happened exactly here? This operating system is mainly concerned about the different type of interrupts, whatever we are generating. Whatever the different type of interrupts we have, whatever we are generating, that is concerned with operating system because he is the one who is going to handle this interrupts. Now, what is going to be exactly here during this particular scenario? He will, so these interrupts can be stored in your lower level memory. These interrupts can be stored in your lower level memory. So that's the reason operating system will always be stored in lower level memory. So what does that mean? I will show you in the diagrammatic way. This is the diagram. Let us suppose this is a 4 GB RAM. Okay, the address starts from this. I am representing on top. You can write represent down also. So if I am representing here, so operating system will be present in lower level. So from 00 to 1200. 4 GB means I am assuming as 4000 MB. So I'm representing 4 zeros and this is your 4000. So this is the way. So from 0000000 to 1200, this is occupied by your operating system. Remaining portion is for user space. Okay. So your operating system is divided into two. That is what it's saying, two partitions for the resident of operating system. This is what it's talking about here. Okay. And the remaining portion is used by your user processor. Now here, before discussing about this, we need to means how this memory is allocated. Whatever the user space we are talking about here, how this user space is allocated to the processes, multiple processes. Before discussing that, we need to discuss about the concept called as protection. How we can provide protection? Since we have seen in the previous diagram that we have operating system here, I have placed P1 here, next I have placed P2 here. So how we can make sure that P1 doesn't occupy P2 and P2 doesn't occupy the memory of P1. So we need to provide protection. How can we provide that protection? Well, we will be using the previous concept, something called as base and limit registers, what we have already discussed. I will show you. Here it is. This is the diagram related to your base and physical register. So if you look at here, we have something called as CPU. So we know that CPU will be generating logical address. We know basically this is the address generated by CPU whenever we people try to compile a program. Now here we will be using the two parameters here, limit register and relocation register. Relocation register is nothing but your base register. Base register is called as relocation register. Now this base register will consist of the memory addresses. Like as I told you 000, this is something 4000, right? So these addresses will be present in your relocation. So from which address we need to start storing? So till here, let us suppose 1200. Means from 1201 to remaining we can access 4000. So that information, this 1201 will be located in this particular register, relocation register. Limit means every process is given some limit. Now this we have divided into fixed sizes like this. So what is the limit? 12,000 to this is something 12,060. So what is the limit we do have here? This is 60. The limit register is 60. So 1201. Okay, 1201 to 60. So means from 1201 to 1261. We can allocate any process whichever is coming. That particular process can be allocated in this particular location. Okay. So this is the way. So here how we are trying to protect here is simply CPU will be generating a logical address. We will compare that logical address with the limit register. Let us suppose CPU generated 35 as a logical address. Is it less than 60 or not? Yes, it is less than 60. Condition satisfied. Then we will go to the relocation. So what is the base register we have? 1201. For this we will add 35. So how much we are getting? 1236. So here we will be, so 1236 might be somewhere here. So here we will storing one of the segment of that particular process. Okay. Now in case the CPU is generating a logical address of 61, what will happen? It will, I will explain this. See, 1201 is the base. If you add 1201 to 61, so how much you are getting here? 1262. But what is the limit we have? 1261 only we can access. 1262 we cannot access. That's the thing. That's why we are comparing this logical address with this limit address. 61 is greater than 60. Immediately a trap will come up saying that whatever the logic address is generated, it cannot be supported. Why? Because the limit is only till 60. So it will ask the CPU to generate another number. Now the CPU will generate another number, something like 55. It is less than 60. So we will be sending that. It will be combined with the base register. So 55. How much we are going to get? So 12. So this is your 1201. So 1256. So we can store at that particular location, that particular process. This is the way the whole scenario actually works. Okay, this is the way we can protect one process from accessing the memory of another process. Let's come back to memory allocation. How we can allocate memory. So basically there are two ways of allocating memory here. First one is fixed partition. So what do you mean by fixed partition here is nothing but you are taking a process. So process some portion is occupied by operating system, remaining is user space. Now this user space we will be dividing into fixed size partitions. We will divide them into fixed size partitions, something like this. So like this 1, 2, 3. Now every partition fixed sizes is okay. Suppose this is 4 MB, the next partition is 4 MB, next partition is 4. So every partition whatever we are doing, it will occupy 4 MB of space. So every partition what we have did right now, it can access at a time only one process. Okay, if P1 is allocated to this, no other process can allocate this, means can access this particular portion. Then P2 we can allocate here, P3 here, P4 here. So whenever one of the process finishes a task, it will be removed and that particular partition will be given to some other process. Suppose P4 is there, P5, P4 is this, P5 came. So P1 completed task, now P5 will be allocated to this particular partition. So this is the way how the cycle works. Okay, now this is what we call it as multi-partitioning method. Now the degree of multi-programming depends upon how many processes are executing in this particular operating system. Now this fixed partition, whatever I said, this is used in your IBM 360 OS by 360 operating system. Well, I just written a mistake here. This is MFT. Okay, IBM OS by 360 uses fixed partition technique in earlier 80s and we call it as MFT. MFT is nothing but multi-programming with fixed number of tabs. Multi-programming, okay, with fixed number of tabs. C is nothing but task, M is nothing but multi-programming, F means fixed. So fixed. If we have a fixed slot and we can have only fixed number of processes within that. So initially how many processes this particular RAM can accommodate? Only 5. Oh, sorry, 4. 1, 2, 3. We have 4 slots. So only 4 processes can execute simultaneously. So whenever one process completes, he will come out and the next process. But at a time, only 4 processes can execute. So the degree of multi-programming here for this particular main memory is 4. Okay. After that, another process came up, another method came up, something called as variable partition. Okay. So in variable partition, what happened is we will not be dividing. We will not be dividing your RAM into fixed slots. Suppose this is your RAM, some portion is occupied operating. So this is the user space. In fixed we divide it, but in variable partition, this entire memory is represented as one unit. So whenever another process comes up, okay, this entire memory, whatever remaining is left, let us suppose this is 4 GB, 1 GB is occupied by OS, then we have 3 GB, right? Now this 3 GB is represented as one unit and that one unit is what we call it as whole. This entire thing, whatever you are saying, we call it as a whole. Okay, now whenever a process comes up, okay, suppose based upon the process requirement, that much amount of memory will be allocated. Suppose P1 came. So P1 requirement is 100 MB. So here from this entire 3 GB, 100 MB will be allocated to process C. After that, sometime process P2 came, he requires around 400 MB. So system try to find out whether 400 MB is there or not. Yes, we do have 400 MB. So it will allocate 400 MB for this particular process P2. Okay, and then after that P3 came. P3 requires some 500 MB, so we are allocated 500 MB. Okay, now P4 came here. P4 is waiting for 200 MB, but right now 200 MB is not available because the memory is full now. Okay, here multi-programming doesn't depend, means multiple levels is not depending now. Now what happened? P5 doesn't get, for P5 has to wait until one of the process completes. Let us suppose P1 has completed and he came out. What is the size we gave? 100 MB. But how much he requires? 200 MB. So he has to wait until either P2 or P3 completes. Let us suppose P2 has completed. So P2 we have allocated 400 MB now. So that will be taken by this particular process now. So 100 MB. So 100 and 400. So total 500 MB right now we have, and P3 is occupying the remaining 500 MB. So what happened here? This 500 MB whatever we have, this will be shown as a single unit, not as a separate 100 MB 400. This totally becomes now 500. So right now we have 500. Now out of this 500, how much is asking? 200. Now we'll cut that into small piece of 200 MB, and then we allocate that particular memory to this particular process P5. This is the way the whole scenario works. I hope it's very clear to you people. Okay, so this is the way how this actual thing works here. Now there are different methods we do. I will show you with the pictorial way so that you can understand. This is the way how variable thing takes place. If you look at here, first we have process P1, P8, P2. P8 is occupying more space. After some time, what happened? Process P8 completed the task. P9 came. P9 requires less task. This is one single unit. Now this entire thing is one unit. Now, apart from that, P9 requires less amount of, so we will be cutting, we'll split it into that two parts and we allocate it. After that, another process came that we have splitted and we are given this process. Okay, and suppose anyone completes it, we'll combine that as a single unit. Freeze memory space will be combined into a single unit. This is the way the whole partitioning actually takes place. Well, we do have some techniques related to that. So we have three type of techniques to allocation that. What is that is? First one is first fit, best fit, and worst fit. What do you mean by first fit here? Nothing but allocate the process that is having big enough. Means search for the from the if the system is arranged in ascending order or not in any of the orders, the whichever the process means whichever slot is having sufficient memory, we can allocate it first itself. Okay, for example, P1 requires 100 MB, and we have partitioned your operating system like in a fixed size. Suppose this is your 200 120 MB, 120 MB, 120. So whichever first empty space which can satisfy this particular process comes, will allocate. So P1 will be allocated to this particular process, means 120 MB. Okay, best fit means suppose here we have something called as 100 MB. First three slots we have 120 MB, 120, 120, 100 MB. So if you talk about first fit, whichever free space available which satisfies this process requirement will be allocated. So P1 requires how much here? 100 MB. But how much we have here? 120. We are allocating it. But P1 will be utilizing 100 MB. What about the remaining 20 MB? This process is not going to utilize. This is what we call it as internal fragmentation. Internal fragmentation. Yeah, this is what we call it as internal fragmentation. Means the process requires only 100 MB, but you people are giving him 120 MB. So the remaining 20 MB is getting wasted because the process is not utilizing the remaining 20 MB. So that is comes under internal fragmentation. Okay, remember this. We'll be coming across in the coming slide. So same way, what about best fit here? Best fit in the sense, allocate the smallest hole that is big enough. Means here, the system will try to find the hole which best suits for this particular process. Now, it will not means first it will come to this particular slot. It will find that this particular slot is 120 MB. Again, it will try to search for the remaining slots. It will come to this particular portion where we have 100 MB slot. So he requires 100 MB. So this slot will be given. The process will be given this particular slot. That is what we call it as best fit. Okay. Worst fit is nothing but allocate the largest hole. Means whichever is largest. Suppose here I have something like 120, 120. This is 200 and 100. So worst fit in the sense whichever the largest hole we have, the system will search and allocate 200. So this will be allocated P1, but actually P1 requires 100 MB only. So 100 MB, it is not utilizing it. So this is what internal fragmentation. Internal fragmentation takes place. This is a problem that exists when we are using this particular method. And the best thing, what is the other thing we need to note here is among these three, these two, first fit and best fit are better in terms of your speed and storage utilization. But if you discuss about these two, first fit and best fit related to your storage utilization, well, these are not. None of them is best related to your storage utilization. You have seen it. There are internal fragmentation. Same way external fragmentation also takes place. So that I will explain here. So what do you mean by external fragmentation here? So external fragmentation is nothing but, let us suppose this is the memory you are having. So OS is occupying this much amount of space. Okay. So after that, what happened? So we are allocating, let us suppose one process came, we have allocated this, next process came, we have allocated this, next process came, allocated this, another process like this. Here, this portion is left unused. There is small portion here, this is left unused. Okay. Same way when this process P3 completes, when process P3 has completed, another process is coming up here. Let us suppose P5 came. P5 doesn't require this much of process, he requires only small portion. Now this portion is empty right now. And here also we have a empty portion. Now, what do you mean the external fragmentation is, new process came, he requires some sort of memory. We don't know, some size of memory required. That size we do have in this particular RAM. If we combine this empty space and empty space, we can allocate to this. But since it is not continuous, that's the reason we cannot allocate to process P6. He has to wait. That is what we call it as external fragmentation. Okay, I'll explain with the news page here so that you can understand here. See, okay, this is a memory we have. Let us suppose P1 came now. P1 requires 100 MB. I have allocated 100 MB. So P1 is allocated. Then P2 came. He requires 100 MB. Okay, I gave him P2. Then P3 came. Just only for your understanding. Okay, let us suppose this is 120. He gave 120. Now after that, what happened? P1 completed. P1 is not existing now here. Okay. Now P4 came. P4 requires 80 MB. So out of this 100, 80 MB will be allocated. Now this 20 MB is free. Okay. After that, P2 has also completed. So we are allocating, sorry, P5 came. P5 is taking, suppose he requires 30 MB. We allocate P3 here. He is occupied. So here we have something called 40 MB left. Assume it. So what happened? Total how much empty space we are having? 60 MB. Now one more process came P6, 60 MB. Now we do have 60 MB empty space. Can we allocate process P6 to this? No, it's not possible. Why? There is a reason. What is the reason here is 600 MB is there, but it is not continuous. It is in a, something like partition, 20 MB separate and 40 MB separate. So we cannot allocate to P6. He has to wait. That is what we call it as external fragmentation. Okay. I hope you understand what do you mean by external fragmentation. If you talk about internal fragmentation, here is nothing but suppose we have 100 MB and process C1 requires 80 MB. You have allocated this process C1 to this. So what is the difference? C1 will utilize only 80 MB. What about the remaining 20 MB? He is not utilizing it. That is what we call it as internal fragmentation. Okay, so that is the whole scenario related to this. That is what been explained in this particular thing. Yeah, so that is what been represented in this particular slide. Okay, we'll stop here. So in the next session, we'll be discussing about the techniques. There are two different techniques we do have. Okay, to overcome this fragmentation, we have a technique called compaction here. Compaction is nothing but that for 20 MB and 40 MB, what I have said is vacated now. So we will try to move the content of the memory to upper space and we'll try to bring this together at one particular location, 20 and 40 at one particular location, and we'll combine and we'll use it as a 60 MB slot. Like here, what will happen is, suppose here for 40, 20 is there. So what we will try to do in this scenario, we will try to move this P3 to upper and we'll bring this 20 MB lower. So here we'll bring 20 MB here and P3 will be stored here. So this 20 and 40 will combine it and make it as 60 MB. So now we can allocate process P6 here. So that is what we call it as compaction. It's very easy. Okay. So in the coming slides, we'll discuss. There are two techniques which will be using this compaction technique. Something called as segmentation and paging. That we'll see in the coming session. And one more point which need to be considered is this compaction cannot be applied when you people are storing, means base registers fixed during load time. Only dynamically when you are allocating the memory, then only we can use this compaction technique. Okay. So in the coming slides, we'll discuss about segmentation and paging techniques. So this is related to this. This is what we call it as segmentation. We have some slides I'll show you. So this we'll be discussing in the coming session. It's very interesting and as well as good one to go through it. So here also we'll be using some concepts related to protection and all and examples. Okay, fine. So this one we'll discuss in the coming session. Thank you for watching.